Wow, I did not know that
My
was
sweet,
gonna go
my
there.
sweet babies. Hey, you got really warm.
I know, I got really hot. Hey guys,
Hi. Welcome back.
Welcome back to our channel.
We're about to have a conversation. The three of us.
I feel like it's really important to have a healthy conversation about sex because I feel like it is a very distorted topic when it comes to what culture pushes on us. And then I also feel like the church is very silent slash
Awkward
shame
turtle.
filled, you know, about it. And so I just want to have a healthy conversation because the heart behind this channel has always been to have awkward conversations that hopefully aren't that awkward, right?
Well, it's about to get honest, kids. I'm calling
There we
this
go.
my truth juice because if there comes an area where I need some liquid courage, I'm going to drink some of my honest kid juice. And also, we should probably preface that this is geared from a sexual viewpoint from a Christian background. Okay, so I've always been a Christian, so like, you know, my beliefs have changed and altered with that. And so if you're watching this and you are a believer, this is for you. If you're not a believer, we want you to
Still
try to...
for you.
Yeah, it's still for you, but we want you to look at it through some of the reasoning that we offer as to the why. Because I think that's the main reason Tori wanted to film this video, is that we don't want to just say, oh, well, just because. Like, we waited until marriage just because.
Yeah.
Like, no, there's like actual reasons that we think are really helpful and beneficial and stuff that you guys should really consider if you're not already. This is gonna get awkward. Let's talk about sex on the internet, babe. So no one ever...
Babe, well, people talk about sex on the internet all the time. It's just distorted and perverted.
Oh, you mean like the WAP song?
Yeah.
WAP or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I've really had a heart for this topic for a long time. I don't have... I did grow up a Christian, but I went through a very rebellious stage and unfortunately did not have purity of heart, if that makes sense. I feel like a lot of times we push a lot of rules and boundaries and all of these things, but we don't focus on the heart transformation of it all. We focus on the lines and the do's and don'ts of sexuality, especially inside of the church. And
yeah, it's kind of like, how close can we get to the line without
still be saved.
without crossing it?
Yeah, and still be a virgin. And we will come out and just be honest with you guys. Neither one of us were virgins when we got married. I definitely believe that years before we got married, I became like a born again virgin in the spirit. And we could talk about that in another video where I kind of regave my life to Christ and regave my purity to Christ. And there was so much shame attached to my past, but the more I look at the heart of Jesus, that shame is not from him. That shame is from the enemy. And if you're out there and you're thinking, well, I've already crossed some lines, or I've already gone there, what's the point? Shouldn't I just keep living the way I'm living? Or should I marry the guy that I've already had sex with so that my number doesn't go up? Or because maybe I won't find a partner who embraces or forgives my past? That's just not the truth of God's word. And it's definitely not, when you look at the cross, like what Jesus did for us. So I don't know why I'm already getting emotional, but I just feel like there's so many lies out there that girls believe that just aren't true. Wow, I did not know that was gonna go
sweet
there.
babies. Hey, you got really warm.
I know, I got really hot.
It's hot in here, but not for the, you know, I mean, we're talking about sex anyway. So I guess I would also like to say that I think there's lies that guys believe too.
Yeah.
You know, growing up for me, because I wasn't just sleeping around and just hooking up and all that stuff, a lot of people made fun of me.
Yeah.
Because I was choosing to wait. And that was even before I was a Christian. That was just personally just what I wanted for my life. And then I was told I wasn't a real man. I was told so many different lies. And so the lies are fed at you, whether you're doing it or not, you know? Yeah. So I would love to, I think it's great that you're going to talk more about from that position. I'll talk from this position. because it really did impact me. And it got to a point where I didn't understand that what people were saying to me was having that deep an effect, that I wanted to kind of re-up my manhood, right? And like kind of prove myself, but mainly to myself. It was almost like I was trying to convince myself. And I developed a really terrible pornography addiction. And for me, and like, I'm not going to make this video all about that, but I just want you to know that, like, you know, lies are fed on both sides. And I think the big thing for me is that this whole, like, is it really that bad? Because obviously if you're watching this, you know, you may not be in a hookup situation. You may be committed to your spouse. You may be really so in love with your boyfriend or girlfriend. You may, like, you know, so what bad could come from sleeping with someone that you love? You know, and I think for me is what it says in scripture is that God doesn't mention any differentiation between having loving or unloving sex. The only differentiation in the Bible is having married or unmarried sex. And so for me, it's not really about whether, like, you're in love with that person or not. It's a matter of what the scriptures say in the context of how God planned sex to be in your life.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it does. And when the Bible says, you know, those description type words or adjectives, I think that we don't comprehend, like, who God is. Because I think in culture, a lot of times, especially non-believers ask, well, is God just trying to keep me from something? And the more you get to know the heart of God, he just wants to protect you. And if you've ever been in a relationship where the lines have been crossed physically and then a breakup happens, it feels like death, right? It feels like a part of you has been, like, ripped out, and that's like God's heart is to protect you from that type of pain. And I think that's why there are parameters around sex, and sex is a good thing, guys. It is a powerful weapon. It is a form of worship.
Yeah, and I want to go off of that just for a quick sec. Is like, you know, when you look at when God created the heavens and the earths and he created Adam and Eve, he gave them different kind of things to do. He said, you know, I want you to, like, work the land, take dominion over the animals, don't eat from that tree. And then another thing was, I want you to fill the earth. I want you to procreate.
Multiply.
I want you to multiply. And, like, okay, well, just in the same way that God created Adam and Eve, he could have created all of us. But he said, no, I'm going to give you something that's good. I'm going to give you sex. I'm going to give you this that has the ability to create life. And I want you to do that.
And I want you to find pleasure in it.
Yeah.
It's like a good thing, guys. It's a good thing in marriage. It doesn't bring shame or guilt. It honestly, I always say this, I say prior to marriage, the enemy will do anything and everything he can do to drive you into bed with that person. And once you get married, he's going to do everything to drive you out of bed with that person, because he knows that it's something that binds you together and makes you one flesh. And I mean, even in the Bible, it talks about husbands do not refrain from sex with your wife. Wives, don't refrain from sex with your husbands. And if you do, you should only refrain to be fully engulfed in prayer, but come back together soon, so that the enemy does not get a foothold and that you can have self-control. And so it really is something that's talked about so much in the Bible, but I feel like a topic that we really don't talk about enough in a healthy way, and things I wish I would have known back in high school. And for any parents who are watching, I know that the title might seem intimidating, but I think the younger the better in terms of having this conversation, because I know I went from a private middle school to a public high school, and the first week I got into high school, I was hearing sex stories, and I hadn't even had my first kiss yet, and my mind was, like, blown, and I let conversations tempt me and make me feel like I was not a woman or not exploring things or whatever, and I believed these lies to fit in or to feel loved. And let me tell you, girls who don't feel loved, they're gonna do desperate things to feel loved, and then it's gonna make them feel empty because they're gonna realize that it's not protected or blessed by God. And then that's where the enemy gets the foothold, and then your identity becomes something that God never intended it to be.
One quick thing I want to say is a lot of the reason why we want to have this conversation that we've been having the past 10 minutes is that we don't want you to just look at us and think, oh, they're just telling us not to do something. Because I want you to, Tori and I both want you to experience real freedom. And so there's a great book on this topic. It's called Sex and Money. And it's by Paul David Tripp. And he kind of challenges the notion of how, sex and money are probably the two chief things that people seek for satisfaction. Money allows you the freedom to do whatever you want to do. And sex is the thing where it's like, it's a very, I'm saying a bunch of weird E-words lately in our videos, like erotic. It's it's one of the most euphoric experiences you've ever have. And so for me, he really challenges that, okay, if people like to look at Christians as if they're handcuffed and they can't do something, so they can't experience real joy. Well, if you can't not pursue sex and money, who's handcuffed? Because you might have some really attractive looking handcuffs that are gold and and all that, but you're chained to wanting to pursue something that you can't not pursue. There's that quote that I love, that if you have something and you can't let it go, you don't own it, it owns you. Yeah. And so for me, I really want to encourage you that we're not saying like, don't do this or stop doing that or whatever. What we're saying is seek real freedom, because the things that the earth offers you, they will go away. Like, you can't find vertical acceptance through horizontal offerings, And so for us, what we really want you to experience is that true freedom. It says in Galatians 5:1, it is for freedom that I've set you free. Therefore, do not yoke yourselves to the chains of slavery. Yeah. And so for me, I just really want that noted, that a lot of the reasonings that we may offer in this video and the next however many parts this series is that we want to talk from an evidence, a personal, and even some like scientific background of why it would be beneficial for you to wait for the right person.
Yeah, I got a message from someone who was just kind of talking about, well, doesn't it help your compatibility to have sex before you get married? And we're here to tell you, no.
Like, okay, it is not that hard. Like, I'm not gonna give you a diagram of how sex works, okay? But like, if you're worried about, I'm not trying to hate on her question, because that is a legitimate question, and I'm sorry if you're watching this and you feel attacked. I don't mean that way at all. But I guess I'm gonna try to answer this in a very kind way. If sexual compatibility is your biggest worry, then I don't think you have much to worry about, because I'm attracted to my spouse and I feel safe with my spouse, and we're in a marriage relationship, and so we work on those compatibility things together if they're not there, but it's really difficult for it to not be there, if you know what I'm saying. It's like, if you love this person, the compatibility just is there because you seek to want to serve that person. But if you're looking at it from a self-serving, how is this person going to please me? Then I don't know if that's compatibility as much as slavery. Yeah.
And for our married couples out there, and even you don't have to be married to hear this, obviously, but I was talking to a friend the other day, and she was talking about how she got married because really, really young, because the church kind of forced it down her throat. Well, y'all have been together long enough, but she was really young and got married to someone that she didn't really necessarily love with her whole heart, and like know that like it was Jesus's person for her. And so sex inside of marriage wasn't pleasurable and didn't feel safe and didn't feel secure and didn't feel any of those things that we're talking about. And other questions arose, like, is it true that you might not always be in the mood to have sex?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah.
I'm not always in the mood to go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
I'm not always in the mood to watch sports. I love watching sports. Like, I'm not always in the mood to read a book. I love reading books. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. And there is times, like, I know that another question was like, is it always the greatest thing ever? Is it always pleasurable? Or sometimes are you uncomfortable? I'm like, sometimes. my stomach hurts and doesn't feel as good, okay? And that's just like the truth about it. And I think that we just like glamorize it. And I got other questions about like, is it like it is in the movies and all the things like that?
No, it's nothing like what's in the movies, but it's better.
So much better.
Yeah, it's so much. And imagine being metaphorically naked in front of somebody. Yes, I know I can't say naked, right? I say naked, not naked.
Naked.
Anyways, imagine being metaphorically naked in front of somebody and them loving everything you are. And you just feel accepted and you feel loved and you feel whole and you don't feel ashamed. And like that's a different type of joy than versus just getting your rocks off because you felt in the mood. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It talks about that in Genesis 2:25. It says they were naked and unashamed, and like that's how the Bible, or that's how God like created it to be. He wanted us to be naked and unashamed, and that's how you can be with a spouse, because you've already like, I'm bound to him and God, right? The 3 in 1. And so there is that aspect, but I can, attest to times when that was not the case and you feel shame and you feel taken advantage of or just gross, icky. It doesn't feel satisfying or like freedom. It really just doesn't, unfortunately.
There were times, because, like what Tori said earlier, we both were not virgins going into marriage. However, we did wait for each other. And there's been several conversations that we've had with our friends saying that, like, we wish if we could go back and undo all the physical history that we've had, we would absolutely do it in a heartbeat.
110%.
In a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Not just for the reasons you may think, not just because I would love to be a virgin going into marriage with my wife, but because of all the damage it's caused our marriage. And it's not like we're on the rocks having a hard time, but it really does. It follows you. It absolutely follows you. And a lot of when I mentioned about how it feels to have sex inside of marriage versus outside is that I feel like whenever it was outside of marriage, I was trying to prove something to myself, or I was trying to affirm something. I was seeking love in all the wrong places, right? I was chasing something, and I was legitimately trying to fill a void. And sex and money is one of the quickest ways that you can try to do that, but it's also some of the most dangerous ways because they're so highly addictive.
When you said something about the bags, I just like thought about in marriage, you don't like check your bags at the door. You bring them in with you, and then you have to unpack those bags with your spouse. And so if you're single, if you're going through stuff, or if you're married, it's so important to have a spouse that you feel like you can unpack those bags with and have healthy conversations about your past. I feel like I definitely want to do a video if you guys are interested in it. I've had this on my heart since before this channel even existed, but getting past your past, for like allowing God's redemption in your life and forgiving yourself and forgiving your spouse and forgiving the whole situation. So anyways, if y'all want that, let your girl know. Oh, I also remember I was on a road trip and I was on a call with my friend Lacey years ago. And this was after I'd kind of given my purity back over to God, but I was in a relationship and I was kind of asking her like, how far is too far? Where do you draw the line? All of the things. And she had such a gut check with me about that whole thing. She's like, Tori, why are you running to the line instead of away from the line in glory of God? And for some reason, I like needed that little switch in my head of, oh, I shouldn't be like running to see how close I can get it and still be a virgin or still be not having sex or waiting till marriage. It's purity of heart. It's purity of thought. And we have to be so careful, especially in today's culture and today's world, of the content we're consuming. Because if we're consuming over-sexualized content, then we're going to think about it. If you're consuming porn, you're going to think about sex a lot more. You're going to think about those things that you're seeing. That's why God says, protect your heart, guard your heart, cover your eyes, cover your ears. What are you listening to? The songs out there today are like utterly disgusting and yet they're trending. And it blows my mind that 12-year-olds can dance to things that are about like gross sexual acts that are not of God, and in the name of like female empowerment and sexual empowerment, and that is just not, it's just not true. It's literally bondage, and it's kind of frustrating that the church doesn't have a voice inside of all of that, or there's no like protection parameters around any of it. But it definitely makes you think.
Yeah, I feel like the United States is just being groomed for sexual culture, which is hard for me. I remember a long time ago when I lived in New York, I had a close friend of mine who was asking questions about why he shouldn't have sex with his girlfriend. And we had a couple conversations about it, but they were kind of short. And then I finally wrote him a long email. And so if you guys want, I can read some of it. Not that they can reply. I like looked at them, I was like, if you want that, kind of hoping, are they gonna go for it?
Guys, I remember like Chad and I weren't even dating, and I asked him how I could encourage a girlfriend of mine who I was talking to about this whole situation, because her and her boyfriend had been having sex for a couple years at that point, and then she got convicted about wanting to live in purity and what's that going to look like. And I remember asking him for advice when we were just friends, and he forwarded me this email, and I remember reading it. Yeah, I remember reading it and being like, wow, this is so good. And then she ended up walking it out, walking in purity. That relationship ended because of all of that, which means it was not the right relationship and definitely not of God. If you decide, hey, I don't feel like walking in, sexual impurity with you, and the guy leaves, take it as a blessing.
Yeah.
And then she met the guy of her dreams, and the Lord blessed it, and they walked in purity till marriage, and they are the best. But anyways, email.
So, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna read it. I took screenshots because the email was sent in like 2016, so it's been a few years. Oh, and I have my honest juice, so get ready to get honest, kids. Uh-oh.
Is that our doorbell?
Yeah, it's here, stay here, I'll be right back. Okay, sorry, that was the Wi-Fi guy. So, if it's okay, I'm going to just read some of this email. So remember, I wrote this to a friend of mine, and so the way it's written is to his heart. And so I don't know where you're sitting right now, your heart posture, but no, this is written to a guy who was comfortable with me saying these things. Preface. I know this is hard. I know this is confusing. I know it doesn't feel natural. I know it seems useless. I know. But we all have feelings we shouldn't act upon. Here in New York City, I feel like punching people in the face a lot. I don't do it because it's not right. The same goes for sex outside of the way God intended. We have to choose what's right, even if it doesn't seem right at the time. I hate eating healthy food, but I do it because it's good for me. I hate working out, but I do it because it's good for me. I hate waking up earlier to do my devotionals with God, but I do it because it's good for me. We have a choice, but we must make sure our choice has God's glory behind it and not our own glory. Ephesians 4:22-24. You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. And we have to choose that daily. So I wrote this. I said, so why is it that you think that having premarital sex or having sex before marriage is okay? I said, is it to please yourself? Is it to please your spouse? Or is it to please God? And there's times I've struggled with this where I was in a very loving relationship, or at least what I thought was loving relationship, and I kept finding myself ask, did God really say me loving this woman is bad? Or in your circumstance, it may be you loving this guy. Is that bad? And I can't help but think of the question that's mentioned in Genesis when Satan, the serpent, said to Eve, did God really say you can't eat from that tree? And we all know what happened next. Anyways, here are some potential issues that come from an over-sexualized culture. Porn addiction. emotional damage, treating people like objects, STDs, AIDS epidemic, abortion on demand, single mothers and single fathers, kids growing up without parents. And there's so many things that are there that come from an over-sexualized culture. And I really want you to think, if you didn't have access to birth control or condoms or other forms of safe sex, would you be living that way? I wrote that. I was like, would you be, if we weren't trying to make sex into objects of our own desire versus what God intended it to be, would we be that willy-nilly with it? And I also encouraged him in one point. I was like, you and your spouse may not be severely affected by the impacts of premarital sex, but that doesn't mean that the other people aren't. And God's character doesn't change with what is deeply affects you or not. God's character stays the same. I said this. The last thing I will say is, God has your joy in mind. We won't get to heaven and say, God, you didn't need that rule, or God, that wasn't necessary. We will get up there and say, thanks, Father, I finally understand. He isn't trying to hold anything back from you. He's trying to make sure you enjoy his present in the way he instructed it. Just imagine that you live in a cold house and God gave you the materials to build a fire and instructions on how to build the fire in the fireplace. What would happen if you followed all the instructions but put the fire in the bathroom rather than the fireplace? You'd burn the house down. The reason I use that metaphor a lot is because I want to show the greatness that can happen around sex. Sex can either be the thing that like warms your house and keeps things going, or sex can be the thing that burns your house down. And so it really is a blessing, but a selfish desire of it can lead to destruction.
Yeah.
Ooh, that sounded deep.
Okay, guys, I feel like we have so much more to say on this, so I think we're gonna do a part 2 where we actually answer your questions that you guys have been submitting, especially just like the misconceptions around sex or the lies that you've believed. I know we touched on that a little bit, but I do want to actually answer your questions that you guys submitted, and I didn't do that yet because we posted that like right before we filmed, so I was trying to give it some time, and I was gonna do it at the end of this video, but this video got a little long, so I think we're gonna do a part 2, and also definitely want to talk more about boundaries. We're thinking about maybe even doing like a boundaries series, boundaries in friendships, boundaries in dating, even boundaries in marriage. And so Henry Cloud has amazing books on all those topics in the meantime. And we'll probably pull some from his books as well, because we want it to be very, informative, but also biblically sound. And so, those are some things to look forward to.
Yeah. And as a quick just refresher, most of the things that Tori and I share with you all are things that were shared with us.
Yeah.
Sure. Like these are not, there's maybe a few unique ideas in there, but reading authors like Henry Cloud or John Townsend from the Boundary series, or really anyone, like we're going through stuff in our own lives, and we experience hardships or victories, whatever, and we try to learn from those situations, and we try to share our learnings. Yeah.
Anyways.
So is that it?
We hope that was encouraging in some way, and we, I think, are looking forward to kind of continuing the conversation.
I just hope we did a good job with the video.
I think we did.
Okay.
All right, guys, we love you. We will see you in the next video. I hope that you really pull no shame from this video, because that is the opposite of what we're trying to do.
I hope that if they were to watch this video, I hope that they pull that sex is great. However, it can have this incredible effect on you to where you do crazy things in order to pursue it. You may even change who you are. You may go against your integrity, do things that you're ashamed of in pursuit of something. And that's something I really want to talk about, is because I want people to just be aware of the power of it. And it can be great power, but it also is something that needs to be handled with caution and with, with wisdom, because it's kind of, like giving a child fire, it can be really dangerous,
Yeah. Anyways, we love you guys. We will see you in the next video. Make sure to comment and like and subscribe and all the things if you want to see more. If you have any suggestions or topics you want us to talk about, make sure to let us know. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram because that's where we have the most conversations with you guys and really get to know you. Okay, we're gonna go now.
I just had a deep conversation about sharing a few reasons why people shouldn't have sex. I'm like,
okay, bye.
Bye.
You know we love putting you guys at the end of our videos. But if there's any random topics you don't want to be attached to, let us know when you send them to us. Okay?
Yeah. Amen.
Really going this time. Love you. Bye.